Today on the BetaFiles, my 44th birthday. Usually a 44th birthday is not that significant, but I'm going to explain to you why mine is pretty significant. It's mainly for me. It's significant for me. So it's a birthday that I have been waiting for 44 years. Well, really 41 years. We'll talk about that and have some fun. Hang on to your diapers, babies. I'm the barber. This is the BetaFiles.
Here's the BetaFiles podcast.
Hey guys, what's going on? So, excuse me, as I mentioned in the teaser, today is my 44th birthday, and now when you see this, it won't be my birthday anymore. It'll be a couple days later. But I thought I was really struggling with what I wanted to do for the podcast this week, and for the most part, yesterday and today I've kind of taken it easy because, it's my birthday, and I don't know, typically I like to take it easy for my birthday. I don't like to overwhelm myself, because I like to sit back, relax, and enjoy just it being my birthday. So, but this particular birthday, more than any of the other birthdays that I've had in my lifetime, 16 was special, obviously, for different reasons. 13 was okay. 21 was funny. I'll just put it that way. It was funny. 25 was cool. My 23rd birthday, I made a big deal about my 23rd birthday because my birthday is on the 23rd. And so I really had a lot of fun that year for my 23rd birthday. 30th birthday was odd. 40th birthday was forgettable. We'll just put it that way. But here we are at 44. And you're probably wondering, okay, so what's the big deal about 44? So, and I've written about this a couple times on the blog, but I was in 1980, July of 1980, I lost my father. And I was 3 years old. My father was 43 at the time. He was getting ready to turn 44. This past May, I think it was May 21st, I officially crossed over and was on May 21st exactly one day older than my dad when he died. And so I had officially on May 21st lived longer than my father, which was something that I was worried about. And I worried about that because his father died in his early 40s. So far, well, there's no so far to it. I have officially lived longer than both my father and my grandfather. Both who died in their early 40s. My dad was 43. My grandfather was 41. For a long time, I thought they were both 43. But I actually sat down and did the math one day and realized, no, my grandfather was actually 41 when he passed, and then my father was 43. So it came to some relief because I was already, I think I was 42 when I realized that my grandfather was 41 when he passed. So my whole life, I have been worried to death that I would not make it past 43. And I always joke that, 44, we're going to have a big blowout. And I had really planned on having like a big blowout for my 44th. But COVID happened, and so I'm not going to have a big blowout for my 44th. So maybe we'll do a big blowout for my 50th. I'm telling you all this, and this has nothing to do with the news. It has nothing to do with art or culture or anything like that. It just has to do with the fact that today is the day I have officially outlived my father. Well, May 21st, I had officially lived longer, but now I have, at 44, I have surpassed my father in every way. And it's interesting for me because, as I said, they both my father and my grandfather died early, died very young. And I know I was joking yesterday in the Optic Poet about 65 and how 65 is not young, it's old. But I think it's safe to say that people in their 40s, if they pass in their 40s, they have died young. And so both my father and grandfather died relatively young. Okay, give you a little health history. Heart problems run rampant in my family. On my father's side. Diabetes runs rampant on my mother's side, so I'm screwed either way when I get to my 60s and 70s. Probably my 50s, who knows. But both my grandfather and my father died of heart attacks. They both had heart disease when they passed. I have heart disease. They discovered my heart disease when I was 32 years old. And so for the past 12 years now, it's been 12 years. Well, it will be 12 years, let me put it that way. Later this fall. But for the past 12 years, they have been treating me for heart disease. And my numbers are fantastic. Well, not fantastic. I don't want you to get the wrong idea, but they're not bad. In fact, they're for somebody who has heart disease at my age, I'm ahead of the curve. My numbers are really good for someone my age. My cholesterol is down. The only real problem that I have is blood pressure. I struggle to fight that a lot. I have continuously tried different things for my diet, stuff that I know I can do. They put me on the Mediterranean diet. That didn't work out. So I have shifted that to a much healthier menu from what I used to have. And that was even better than the menu I had before I was 32. So over the past 12 years, my eating habits have gotten much better, increasingly gotten better. And so I'm still fighting that to get the blood pressure down, to get the blood pressure under control. But as far as cholesterol goes and blockage, the numbers have come way down. When I was originally, they did a cath, what we refer to as a cath, where they run a catheter through your arm into your heart. They did that when I was 32, and found quite a bit of blockage already. Not anything extraordinary, but for someone my age, I had quite a bit of blockage. And then about 4.5, maybe 5.5 years ago, they did another cath, and the blockage, I had cut the blockage by 75%. So the blockage is way down. So now, one of the contributing factors to my high blood pressure, and what I'm still trying to get, my body is still recovering from, was a very extended period of heavy drinking. I was a very high functioning alcoholic for most of my 30s. And my body is still almost, I've been sober for 3 years. And I want to say 7 months now, I think it is. Or no, 3 years and 6 months. I always get March and April mixed up for some reason. But I've been sober since March 22nd, 2017. So it's been three and a half years. So it'll be 4 years in the spring. And in those 3.5 years, my body has been healing itself. But if you know anything about healing, it takes a while, right? My cognitive functions, even 2 years out, we're still recovering. And I still have, I think now I'm starting to realize some of the more permanent damage that I did to my cognitive abilities. Now, I mentioned vocabulary in the last podcast. I also have memory problems. And you can probably hear sometimes I slur my words. I didn't used to do that. So some of those, long story short, there is permanent. I'm pretty sure 3.5 years out, these things are still here. They're probably going to be here for the long haul. And it is what it is. I did it to myself, so I have no complaints, and I'm not going to sit here and whine about it, right? But some of the damage that was done internally is still healing, and it's going to take a little bit longer. And part of that is the blood pressure thing. It's going to take a while for a lot of the internal organs and the blood vessels and things to completely and fully heal. Now, I will confess I'm a smoker, as you've seen in the Optic Poet. That's not helping speed up the healing, right? So go ahead and cuss me out. That's fine. The thing with smoking, and I get this question a lot, why can't you just quit smoking? I don't want to. And when you're trying to quit any kind of substance, you have to want to. And people look at me like, well, it killed your dad, it killed your grandpa. Look at what it does to your body. Yeah, I know. I get it. I see it. And I look at that and say, wow. But I'm not ready to stop. I'm not ready mentally to give the cigarettes up. So that's another fight that I'm battling. But I will one day. I have no doubt in my mind that one day I'm going to say, okay, I'm ready. And I'll be able to do it. I've tried Chantix twice now. It didn't work. I tried cold turkey. It didn't work. I tried the gum. The only thing I have not tried is the patch. So, and what I've seen with the patch, most of the people that I know of who use the patch, they'll have the patch on their arm and they'll be puffing away. So I'm just, what's the point? A friend of mine got, her doctor prescribed her an inhaler that has nicotine in it to try and kill the cravings so that you're not getting all of the other chemicals from the cigarettes. You're just getting the straight nicotine. So I might talk to my doctor about that. I don't know. Because one of the things that I enjoy of smoking is feeling the smoke. And if you're not a smoker, you don't get it. Okay? And if you vape, you don't get it. Okay? Because smoke from a cigarette is completely different from vape. And people ask me, why don't you go to vaping? That's why. It doesn't feel the same. Right? They can make it taste somewhat like a cigarette, but it's the sensation of the smoke as it comes in and out. that the vape doesn't have, right? Because I've tried them. I've tried everything. Actually, one of the things I do to help regulate how many cigarettes I smoke is I keep peppermints laying around. And they actually help. They help in decreasing how many cigarettes I smoke. So there you go. So that's that. All right. So you know, not that anybody really cares, not that anybody's actually watching this, but if you want to blast me in the comments, go ahead and blast me in the comments. It's not going to do any good. Excuse me. So back to my father and my grandfather. So coming in with that particular health history, I've been very aware of my health and aware of what I need to do to continue living. And I know you're going to sit there, well, quit smoking. You know, just stop and hear me out. Listen to me. One of my points of, it's not really my point of pride, it's my wife's point of pride, is that I rarely get sick. When I do get sick, I get sick. Now, I had a lung infection about 5 years ago now, 2015. I had a lung infection. The lung infection didn't come from smoking. It came from drinking far too much, eating the wrong thing when I was drinking, and I vomited a lot. And what ended up happening was some of the vomit got trapped in my gums and got into my bloodstream. And the poisons from the vomit, from the acids in your stomach, went from, I didn't realize this, but there is a vein or an artery. There's a connection from your jaw down straight to your lungs, or straight to your heart, I'm sorry. And what happened is that the acids and all the toxins that had come up through the vomit and had gotten trapped in my gums came down into my heart and went straight to the lungs, and that's how the lung infection happened. This is what the doctors figured out. And it took them almost 2 weeks to figure out what it was and what happened. They put me on heavy antibiotic treatments, got the lung infection taken care of, and I'm fine now. I've had bronchitis once in my lifetime. I've had the flu a few times, not that many, but a few. The worst flu I ever had, I was about 14 years old. And my mother had it at the same time I did. My poor stepfather had to take care of both of us because we were just awful. Bronchitis, the bronchitis that I had was probably the worst. Being sick, that was probably the worst I've ever felt in my life. There were moments where I didn't think I was going to be able to breathe because my bronchitis had gotten so bad. I mean, it was a really, really bad case of bronchitis. But other than that, I've never had pneumonia. I still have my tonsils. So I have a pretty strong immune system. Used to, but past couple years, this hasn't happened as severe, but used to, every February I would get a cold. And it was like clockwork. You know, I knew sometime in February, just something about February, right, that time of year, I would end up getting a cold, and I would get a cold for a few days, and sometimes it would be so bad that I would call in sick because I wanted to just lay in bed and let the cold do its thing. And then I would go and get Sudafed, like the real full-blown Sudafed, and for 2 or 3 days, pop Sudafed and Dayquil, and my cold would disappear. My cold would go away. And this happened like clockwork until, like I said, for the last couple of years since I've gotten sober. I've been sick I've gotten a cold maybe once since I've gotten sober. So knock on wood, we'll keep that going. So as far as health goes, with the exception of the blood pressure problem, which, like I said, I'm working on to try and regulate down. Other than that, I'm pretty healthy. I did do a stress test For you heart patients out there, you know what a stress test is. I did it last November was my most recent one. I won't have to do one for a while, another one for a while. And everything came back great. Everything's working just fine. So I do have angina every so often. It's rare, but I do have anginas every once in a while. And the best way I can explain angina, now my experience with angina, and it was angina that actually got me into the hospital and got the diagnosis that I had heart disease. To be more specific, I have coronary artery disease, CAD, okay, which is heart disease, okay, and that's basically the buildup of plaque in the arteries. And like I said, I've cut a lot of that buildup down. So, my most recent stress test, which again was last November, looked great. Came back perfect. Came back wonderful. Well, not perfect, but you know, I keep saying perfect, but y'all are probably thinking, oh, he's great. It's, you know, I'm a middle-aged man. Nothing is perfect anymore. So anyway, so getting to 44, what's that got to do with anything? Getting to 44 has been an interesting ride and a scary ride, because I didn't know if I'd make it. One of the things, though, when they told me that I had, when I was 32, when they told me I had it, I was actually relieved, and I thought they caught it. I already had a leg up on both my father and my grandfather because they caught it when they did, which meant they could treat it and get me over this hump that I have officially gotten over. The other thing is the medicine that we have today is much better than the medicine my father had, and so like universes better than the medicine that my grandfather had access to. The medical care that we have today is light years ahead of what my grandfather had access to, unfortunately, and much better than my father. If my father had survived, or my father had lived in this day and age, my father would have survived. I'm pretty convinced of that. My grandfather, I don't know, because again, the medical help was not enough at that point in time to really know what could have been done to prevent it. He died in the 1950s. So, but for my father, I am pretty sure that if he were living in this day and age, my father would have survived. But woulda, coulda, shoulda, right? What ifs never get you anywhere. So 44 is a milestone for me. And I got to thinking about that earlier today. What does that mean? To be a milestone. I think we all have our own different milestones. When I turned 40, instead of celebrating the fact that I had hit 40, I thought, okay, we're counting down now. The real countdown has begun, right? While most people look at 40 and say, that's the big milestone, you know, or 50, get to 50, and that's the big milestone. Or you get to 60, 65, right, where you can theoretically retire. That's the milestone. But for me, 44 has always been the big one. And we all have those moments in life, whether we know that we're coming up to a milestone or not, right? So I knew I was coming up to this, and I got over it. And here I am. And I'm excited that I'm here. And I'm happy that I'm here. And I'm sad that my father is not here to celebrate the fact that I crossed that milestone. Of course, if he were here, it would have been a milestone. I used to try and imagine, when I was younger, what life would have been like if my father had survived. I used to try and imagine houses and friends and colleges, what career choices I would have made if my father had survived. What life would have been if my father had not passed away that day. And somewhere along the way, I think it was after my first divorce, but somewhere in there, I realized that's not reality. You can't do that to yourself. It's nice. It's fun to sit back, lay back in a chair, close your eyes, and try to imagine. But it's not what happened. And no amount of wishing is going to change it. And what I've learned in my sobriety, what I learned from AA, especially when I first came out of rehab and got into AA, the most important lesson I learned was understanding, not just taking, their big motto is one day at a time. It's not just taking your sobriety one day at a time. A girl and I came up with a great philosophy while we were in rehab, and that was, I'm not going to drink today, I'll drink tomorrow. But I'm not going to drink today. And the idea was that you never actually get to tomorrow. Every day is today. So I'm not going to drink today, I'll drink tomorrow. You never actually get there. And it helps you cope. Helps you cope with the shock of letting go of the drug. Because when you first become sober, it's a shock. It's nothing short of just pure and utter shock. Your body doesn't know what to do. Maybe one day I'll do a podcast about my first day in rehab, because it was awful. This one guy said that, because my eyes were so swollen, he said at first, on first glance, because he didn't really get to look at me, that he just glanced at me, he thought I was Asian American because my eyes had swollen so much. Detoxing is, I'll put it to you like this, one of the biggest reasons why I will not allow myself to go down that path again is because detoxing is the most horrendous thing I've ever been through in my life. It was awful. But anyway, it's getting off subject. But anyway, so when you look at the one day at a time thing, it's not just about being sober one day, taking it one day at a time, putting it off. I'll drink tomorrow. Life is one day at a time, because the reality is that you're constantly in the present. You're never in the past, and you're never in the future. You're always right now. Always. Every second of every day is right now. And once that right now passes, you can't get it back. So if I were to take and throw, this pin across the room, I can't go back and take the throw back. It's happened. So getting to that point and understanding that, and like I said, it was through dealing with AA when I first got sober that I came to that realization. And coming to that, you understand it's wonderful to sit down and fantasize about those things, but understand that it's never going to change. That's not going to change. It's going to be the same. You're still going to have to deal with the reality of those events, right? And you're still going to have to deal with the fear that those events created. In my case, it was my father's death. And I've dealt with them for a long time. And now I have new fears. My new fear is now, my new fear is, what am I going to fear now that I've gotten over it? The one thing in my life I was most afraid of has come and gone. And I'm here. So the question is, now what am I afraid of? What do I fear? Now what goal do I set? And it's an easy question to answer for a lot of people, but you actually have to stop and think, okay, what is the reality of the situation? When you get to the other side of that monster, the monster at the end of the book, when you get there, you get to that end, what do you do afterwards? That's the one failure of Grover's narrative. When he finally gets to the end of the book, and it's him. He's the monster at the end of the book. Once the book is over, well, what do you do after that? Now that you've gotten to the monster and you've gotten to the end, what do you do afterwards? You start over? But you already know what's going to happen. So it's interesting. It's an interesting question. It's a question I'm going to be personally struggling with for a long time. For a while. Not a long time, but a while. I'm 44 years old. Happy birthday.